We are live, May 25th, 2019, Social Safari Podcast, Episode 2. I am here with Bob Rhodes. Bob, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Bob, wanted you on the podcast to talk about a few things. One thing specifically, Bob is originally from Philadelphia, spent some time in... There you go. Spent some time in Oregon. Came out to Virginia to finish his graduate program. In between all that, though, Bob did something pretty cool. He hiked the entire Appalachian Trail. Did I say it right? Appalachian, not Appalachian?
It is pronounced Appalachian, but most people say Appalachian. It's kind of weird.
In the Northeast, we definitely say Appalachian, but
Yeah.
I was corrected. It's Appalachian.
It's supposed to be Appalachian, yeah.
So Bob had the chance to hike the Appalachian Trail. What's the distance on that, Bob?
So it changes every year slightly based on how they reroute the trail. When I hiked, it was like 2,143 miles. But yeah, 2,100, 2,200 miles. It's a long way.
And the estimated completion time frame, what are we looking at right here?
Normally about 6 months. Some people go crazy and get it done in like 4 months. It was about 7 months altogether for me.
7 for you? Okay. And so I was reading a little bit about this before we sat down, and it looks like most folks go south to north. Like you start in, is it Georgia?
True, yep.
Go up to Maine,
Yep.
And that's the sort of the normal pattern. And now why do they do that?
That's just kind of how it's mostly been done. Most people start in the spring, then you end in the fall in New England, which, as you know, sort of being from Massachusetts, the fall in
That
New
was the
England,
first podcast, if you're curious as to where I'm from.
following the Where is Wid From podcast. Fall in New England, quite beautiful. You know, you kind of follow the seasons as you go up. Plus the last mountain, Katahdin in Maine, is just one of the most spectacular and dramatic hikes of the whole hike. So it's kind of like this big dramatic finish to the hike. Right before you get there, there's a 100-mile wilderness where there's nothing, no
100-mile
roads.
wilderness. Isn't it all wilderness? Is it 2,000 miles of wilderness?
I mean, pretty much, but that's the only section where there's a straight 100 miles where there's no road access at all. I mean, it's 100 miles. There's nothing out there. It's just you in the woods. Most of the trail goes through, somewhat populated areas. So you might have a Forest Service road that's only 5 miles from a town,
Right?
Which seems like a long way, but you at least have some kind of connection to the outside world. But right before Katahdin, there's a 100-mile wilderness where there's just nothing. Just
you and your thoughts and maybe a hiker or two.
Yeah, maybe some weird ones.
Wow, yeah, I guess. So that was one of my first questions, Bob. Was on this sort of multi-month, multi-mile trek. What's the population look like? Do you see folks a lot? Do you see hikers? Are there just like scores of Boy Scouts going down? I mean, are there other folks doing what you're doing? Or I mean, is this before social media? So maybe not necessarily meetup groups too much. So like what does the social interaction look like?
Yeah, when I hiked, it was before social media, so definitely different time. A lot less cell phones then. Old timers. So, but yeah, well, it all depends on the season. Where you're at, and is it a weekday or a weekend? So, several thousand people a year try to hike the trail. So when you're down in Georgia and North Carolina, there's a lot of people. It's really busy.
So the start is going to be very busy.
Yep.
Katahdin, though, not too many folks.
Not too many folks, yeah. It all thins out as you go up. So only about 10% of the people that try to hike it actually finish. So
10%?
Yeah,
wow.
90% of the people that start, don't finish. So
wow.
Even by the time you're halfway up, even like 1,000 miles, the crowd is already thinned out. And, there's more of a crowd when you're closer to town. Obviously, most people that go out for day hikes, it's, within a 10-mile stretch. And then, weekends, there's more people. But if you're further than 10 miles from a road or a town and it's the weekday, there's not a lot of people out there.
It's people doing what you're doing pretty much.
Yeah, mostly people doing what we're doing. There is a pretty big community out there. There's people in towns that will help hikers a lot. They'll give you a ride from like a Forest Service road to town if you need to resupply. So there is kind of a community out there, people that help each other, and hostel owners that run hostels in these small towns. But there's definitely some sparse times where you don't see a lot of people. I went 2 days without seeing anyone. At
2 days.
One time,
Just you and your thoughts.
Yeah, like full 48 hours, like 9 a.m. one day to 9 a.m. 2 days later. And that was about the longest stretch, which is a little bit weird because I started in 2002, and I had heard that there were people hiking like on September 11th, and like they're just out in the woods.
They didn't know what happened.
They had no idea what was going on. You know,
Wow.
No cell phone, no social media, so they're just hiking out in the woods, and then September 12th or 13th they pull into a town and figure out this thing happened.
Wow.
So your mind just kind of like goes when you're like, it's been 2 days since I've seen another human being. Like, did something happen and I missed it?
And something definitely did happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's funny because at least in our generation, in our time frame, that's one of those questions where you can ask anybody and say, "Hey, where were you on 9/11?" Everybody knows exactly what they were doing, where they were at, and for someone on the trail, it's like, I don't know. I might have been, mile marker 48 or whatever, somewhere in Georgia. That's a crazy point. So tell me a little bit about, why did you decide to do this? Why in general, what are the reasons? Are they similar? Are they different? I mean, other than like, I want to conquer this thing and do this amazing physical and mental task, but what was your backstory? What did you want to accomplish?
So for me, it was actually my best friend's idea at the time.
Did he go with you?
He ended up not going with me. So yeah, my best friend Jake, we were both really into hiking a lot, and really enjoyed it. He's a guy that always pushed the envelope, was always kind of dreaming about the next big thing to do. So great guy, cool guy, and he had talked about doing it for several years. He was trying to convince me the whole time, like, we should do this, man. And I started out being like, nah, you're not going to do this. Come on, And so finally he convinced me, and I was like, you know what? This sounds awesome. I mean, I read up on it, figured out what it was going to look like. And, we were, 20 years old at the time, not a lot of responsibilities.
How old were you when you did it then?
Started when I was 21.
Okay, so shortly after the planning process then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, I just decided like that fall. Yeah, I was 21, and like, hey, let's go for this. Let's do it. And then my buddy Jake ended up joining the Army after September 11th. I just found like,
so he had a good reason for not
totally
for not doing it then, I guess.
Yeah, he just felt like this was the right thing to do, and wanted to serve our country in that way. So he did end up serving in the Army, and then he ended up hiking the trail. Later.
Oh, so he did do it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
After he got out of the Army, he hiked
Sorry,
it the
Jake.
next year.
No offense, buddy.
And he did. I did end up joining him for like a week of that, which is really cool. So we did get to experience a little bit of the trail together, like we had dreamed of all those years. But yeah, it was just his idea, and I just latched on, and it wasn't something that I ever probably would have done by myself. So I'm super thankful that he had that dream, and it was a pretty big deal for me. I was pretty unmotivated guy, and it was a big task.
This kind of took you to a new place then. Like you had shared this with me before, but you were saying how, like not necessarily the most go-getter guy out there, and then this was just sort of like this daunting task, and you kind of overcame that, and you came out on the other side a different person, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I was like a classic underachiever, to be honest. Like total slacker in high school, didn't do anything. Could have worked hard and had a good plan for college, but was not motivated. This was kind of like the big thing that kind of like got me over that hump. It was just the first thing that I really said, this is a really difficult task, but I'm going for it, and I'm not going to stop until it's done. So
what was so you started where in Georgia?
Springer Mountain in Georgia.
Springer Mountain. So what did the first week look like? And what did that look like for you? Like what was your thoughts there?
It was pretty much brutal. So you kind of you try to prepare for it as best as you can. I read all these books.
Did you train? Like, is there training? You were a hiker before, but
yeah. I went a lot of day hikes. The biggest thing they tell you to do with training is get used to the pack, which I did a little bit, but it's just so hard to get used to carrying a pack all day, every day. I mean, there's nothing you can do to just get used to that all the time. So yeah, you try to hike as much as possible, carry a pack. I always tell people like try to like walk barefoot everywhere, kind of get your feet a little roughed up
On the trail?
get your feet prepared.
Oh, before.
Just around, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like harden the bottom of the feet, get some
Right.
calluses going.
Exactly, yeah.
Huh.
But I mean, it's so you can't totally prepare for it. A 6-month hike. The biggest thing you can do is just try to get your gear right, which I really didn't have at first. So the start was just really really
You had
rough
some
for
iron
me.
skillets you were carrying around, or
Man, it was horrible. Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of research, but still, I just had way too much stuff. And then I started the trail. I flew down to Atlanta and then stayed with my buddy at University of Georgia for a long weekend and stayed with him at his frat house. And just it was not a good start.
no, rough morning.
Rough morning. So already having way too much weight, feeling terrible.
So your first hour, you ready to quit then?
Yeah, I briefly kept a journal while I was on the trail, and ended up just being too much work, to be honest. Like journaling, I don't know. I'm just not a big
Tired.
journaler. Not a big
Long
journaler.
day.
Yeah.
Tired, hungry,
But
tired.
I still
sleepy.
have the journal. The first couple entries are hilarious. Like the first one is like, I lived 3 lifetimes today, because I mean that's legitimately what it felt like. Because most people start from the state park that actually takes you up to Springer Mountain. So it's like 8 miles of like gradual uphill.
The first 8 miles.
The
of
first
whole
8
thing.
miles, which sounds okay, to like a day hiker. But I probably had like 80 pounds on my back, which is way too much. Like I said, some of the gear I had was good. Some was just totally wrong. So, I mean, I was just dying.
So you and a small child did most of the AT together.
Yeah. So, yeah, the first 8 miles was just brutal. I was dying. There's a phenomenon called a 0 day. So 0 day is any day that you don't actually hike on the trail. You're not like logging any miles.
You just do.
You do nothing that day.
You just chill.
Yeah. So most people have 0 days once every couple weeks. So my first 0 day was like 30 miles in, like the very first stop that's possible on the trail.
So your third day on the trail was 0 day.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Pretty much, yeah. It was basically as rough as a start as you could have. And I'm sure plenty of people were like, "This, what's this guy doing out here? Like, he's not gonna make it." I didn't know if I was gonna make it either. I was just going for it.
Just rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Did were there parts along the trail that you mentioned people doing day hikes where they would like pass you, or they would like walk by you like, "Hey, what's up?" and you'd just be like, "Look, like this is my 18th day and I haven't showered. Like, go away." Like, was there a part of you that was like had some animosity to people just doing day hikes? Like, no, you don't understand, or some sort of jealousy maybe, or
Yeah, maybe it's sometimes. Yeah, it's it's very different just day hiking as far as compared to like living out there. It was interesting. It was a little bit annoying sometimes with the day hikers, the crowds, and close to town. One thing we got to eventually notice is when you start seeing more trash on the trail. That's like a way that town is coming. You're like within 10 miles of town.
so if humans are destroying the forest,
Right. Then
there's
like,
people
okay.
there.
Yeah, okay, town's coming up. There's a lot of trash around. We're like, okay, I'm starting to get hungry, ready for a cheeseburger.
The more
now.
pollution, the more people.
Yes. Yeah, it was very easy to tell. Like, we must be within 10 miles of town because there's tons of trash.
Did you count the trash? Oh, there's 6 cans, 2 bottles. Oh, I got 1 mile.
You can almost set your watch to it. It's pretty ridiculous.
That's a terrible marker, but
Yeah.
probably comforting to start seeing. You're the happiest person to see trash.
right. Yeah. Oh, good. There's trash.
Yes, Snickers bars.
Yeah. It's very true.
Was there at what point along the first, say, month or two where you hit like a wall and you were like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to call someone. I need to find someone. I'm going home. How did that happen often for you, or did you kind of just muscle through and ignore that little person, or?
Yeah, it happened pretty often that first 30 miles
The
or
first
so.
0 day.
Yeah, that first day that I lived 3 lifetimes. I mean, it was by far the hardest thing I'd ever done. I mean, like I said, I was total underachiever. I didn't do anything in high school. I was slacker. And all of a sudden I have this like daunting task on me, carrying way too much weight. So yeah, that first 30 miles, the first stop, I'm like what am I even doing out here? Like I just rearranged my life, quit my job, like bought all this gear, and like I am doing terrible. And I'm meeting all kinds of people that seem to have it all together a lot more than I did, like
Or the other direction.
have way lighter packs and have trained but there's a good community out there. A lot of people gave you some good tips. The earlier part of the trail was all about just getting rid of weight. So I mailed home like 10 pounds of gear that first 30 miles
Down to 70 then.
Yeah, right, down to 70, and then just continue to cut weight the whole time up. But I would say the first few weeks, 3 weeks or so, pretty rough. And I eventually got into North Carolina, had my first 20-mile day, and that's when it like hit like, man, I might be able to do this, like
North Carolina was the turning point then.
Yeah, I just did 20 miles today. It was tough, but not killer. Packs was starting to feel a little bit better. Like, hey, I might be able to do this for at least a couple months, but anytime you look at that trail map and see how far you've gone
Golly,
compared to how far you have to go.
PTSD at its finest right there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Was there parts of it where you felt physically in danger? Like you felt either from an animal, another human, or weather? Like were there parts where you're like, this could be a really bad day?
There were times. It's not not as extreme as a lot of other things. Several people were like, "Oh, you hiked the trail, now you're going to do Everest." Like it's totally not like that. It's not mountaineering. It is just hiking and backpacking. There are steep uphills and downhills. So there's times when you're like, "Oh my gosh, I could fall at any time now." You're coming down some of these steep downhills with a big pack on your back. I mean, that really throws you off a lot of times.
We're thinking like sprained ankle though, as opposed to like, immediate death.
Right.
Maybe an uncomfortable day or two, but
injuries, yeah, for sure. I mean, you could get injured on any second of any trail.
Sure.
Just tons of stuff like that. And then there's some crazy people around.
Hiking the 20-mile hike, you hiked pretty fast that day. You made somebody crazy.
Yeah. More crazy people like close to town or like in some of these weird small towns.
Just littering, just littering and craziness.
Yeah. Hitchhiking was an adventure. Because you hitchhike a lot,
to town. You mean like from the trail to town?
From the trail to town is sometimes like 3 or 4 miles, and you really don't want to do that. That doesn't count for anything.
That's 0 mileage or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So we did a lot of hitchhiking, and that could get weird. We had a time where we were just at a place where we just could not get anyone to pick us up. So we ended up just going to a gas station and offering people money. We're like, hey, we'll give you $10 to just like give us a ride somewhere. And the guy was like, sure, seemed nice and everything. Took our money, took us directly to a house to buy some pills. And then started taking us to the trail again.
Bob, you totally facilitated someone's terrible habit. As long as he isn't litter.
We're like, what do we do now? Like, he's going in to buy pills. Like, do we leave?
You need to get to town, though.
Do we just run away?
You gotta get to town.
Are we just in for this? We're just in for the long haul here. Some bear encounters. A lot of different random stuff.
Was there, so obviously you mentioned the 100-mile wilderness. There were long days in every state, I'm sure. What did you, this is a dumb question, but what did you do? I mean, obviously you were walking and hiking, but for me at least, if I do a day hike, I can kind of put it in my head. I'm getting out of town for a day, down to Roanoke, McAfee's Knob and back, or Tinker Cliffs, something like that. And I can kind of, I'm busy all week though. I'm in technology. I'm, working with patients and doing notes, and I just want to unplug and kind of go away. But when your world is away, I would imagine it gets a little boring, but what did you do to stay entertained or keep yourself busy is the wrong word, but what did you do on those 20-mile days where you just walking? What was your mindset? What was your thought process?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of time out there just thinking alone with your thoughts. Your mind can really wander, which is a great thing for some. It can be a bad thing for some people that just have a tough time with that. But just alone with your thoughts, which is a great thing for me at the time. Like I said, just was really kind of just bouncing along in life, not in a great place. So it was a great thing for me to just think about where life was going and where I wanted it to go. I did have a radio out there, for a little bit of music. And you do hike with people from time to time.
You mentioned like you go a couple weeks with somebody, a couple weeks with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I hiked with 3 other guys for about a month and a half. And I hiked just me and one other guy for about a month. So, you do meet with people, talk to people. But that's a lot of just alone time in the woods with your thoughts. It's a lot of quiet. A lot of time with nature. Very remote, very different.
Yeah, just
life.
you and nature at that point.
It's interesting. I heard, I read a recent article about like the way kids experience time. Like time to them is so slow because they're like so observant and noticing every little thing, versus like adults where we just go through our day and just like it's like mindless. You're going through a work day and it's like whatever, and just the whole week flies by. But that time that I was out on the trail, I mean, you're just taking everything in. You're just living this life that's completely different. So even though it was 7 months, I mean, it felt like I was out there for years. I mean, it was like literally like a part of my life. Like this is like this chunk of my life. I lived like a totally different life than normal and got to experience everything that was out there. So
I almost feel like, and it's interesting that you say it from that perspective, I almost feel like, today's Saturday and we've done a lot of activities today, did a lot of stuff yesterday. I almost feel like the weekends and my off days, I feel like that. I feel like I got so much in. I can remember most of the day. I got up, I ate this, I did this, I went here and I did this. And, the day is so full with things that, not necessarily you want to do, but you're doing. And it's not the grind. It's not the day-to-day kind of going through the motions. And I feel like you remember so much more of the day versus like a Monday. I don't know if I could tell you I did last Monday or Tuesday. Like
right.
I have to look at my patient schedule. Like I wouldn't even know.
Right.
Because it's such a, I'd probably tell you like I got up, had breakfast, I worked out and came home. And that's kind of it, right? I mean,
that's every day.
Right, exactly.
Definitely working out every day.
That's such a good point, though. I love what you said about that, because maybe that's something that we don't do enough of. We don't live in the moment enough. We don't spend enough time, observing just the small things like you do, say, on the trail or say on a weekend where you're kind of picking up on everything there. And did you take that away from your time? Did you kind of come away from that going like, wow, like I waste days? Or days go by and I don't know what I did. I've been binge watched a New Girl or TV show or something like that. Yes, Mark, that was for you. And
New Girl is delightful, Mark.
No, it's not at all. And so, did you take that back with you? I'm picturing this like going to Mars and back. Did you take it back with you and kind of try to apply it to your days now?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's such a different world and different life. And it makes you appreciate that time, and it makes you appreciate what you have, here in your regular life. I think it does reframe, how you think about things and how you process things. It makes you more appreciative of, the small moments. I'm not going to say like every moment of every day of my life is like meaningful.
Right.
About everything, but certainly, just being out there in the quiet and the random and the alone. Can make you think about and appreciate, the moments that you have here, for sure. And that was kind of the point of this article as well, like being in the moment, like thinking about this, like thinking about your surroundings, thinking about what you're actually eating and doing rather than just going through the motions. It's definitely made me more purposeful with what I'm doing. Almost everyone that I meet and talk to about the trail, they always say like, oh, I would love to do something like that if I had the time.
Right,
and,
yeah.
And most people like say that as like a thing to say, but like you don't really mean it.
Do you ever just grill and be like, yeah, would you? Are you going to?
I sometimes did.
Start in Georgia.
Right, yeah. I stopped telling people about it sometimes because you're just going to say that thing that everyone says, like, oh, I would totally do that. Like, you wouldn't, man.
Yeah, please tell me you do
can
that.
Barely walk.
You're kidding. You would never do that.
Right.
You're tired walking from here to the car, let's be honest. That would be kind of a tough way to start a friendship there, though.
Yeah.
Speaking of eating, weirdest thing you ate on the trail?
Oh man, there's a lot of weird stuff. I had a lot of like ramen mixed with tuna, like the tuna
Ramen
packets.
and tuna.
Yeah, because ramen's easy to cook and light,
Right.
and then the tuna packets are good source of protein, like the little foil packs of
And
tuna.
that tastes like
That's okay.
you gotta get the shrimp ramen. You can't get the chicken one into the beef
So
one.
the weird thing that I got into was like I would have the like the shrimp ramen, but with the chicken flavoring packet. I don't know, somehow
no,
that
that's
made
just
sense.
that's
Somehow it
combining.
made sense in my mind, and it just worked.
That was in the wilderness, right? That was when you thought,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna combine these different types of ramen."
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
go to
I mean-
restaurants now and order it?
No,
Can I get the
would not do
chicken
that.
ramen with the shrimp packet, little tuna on the side?
I would definitely not do that, but somehow in my mind, in the woods, it made sense, and it was delicious, and it worked.
Hey, when you're hungry, you're hungry. Did you ever drink any water? You thought, I probably shouldn't drink this water.
Yeah, I mean, you have to treat your water the whole time you're out there, which is definitely like a process and something you have to think about. So that's a little tough. And I bought like totally the wrong water filter, and there was times when you're like, it's like it is out here now, like hot and dry. There's not a lot of water around, so you're like dipping into this little puddle of like nasty, murky
You're just
water.
praying. You're just praying.
Yeah, and just holding like, I'm pretty sure this water filter works and like is guaranteed. And yeah, that's some tough stuff. There's a lake up in New Hampshire in the White Mountains that they said, whatever you do, don't drink the water from this lake. They never said why, and we never heard until later. We heard the story that they were airlifting a porta potty out of the White Mountains.
And it fell into the lake.
And it fell into that lake. So a legitimate like full porta potty full of stuff fell into this lake.
Oh,
So,
that's just
at least we heard why. At least we heard not to do it.
that water you're drinking right there. You're just enjoying every minute of it.
Definitely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What? So, went through this whole process. You shared with me you had a bunch of injuries. Obviously, we have the physical kind of component there and the mental component. What was your biggest takeaway from the whole experience? Like when you finished it at Maine, and the photos of folks who finished the trail are incredible, like totally incredible. I was looking at a bunch online, and for the most part, they look like they need to go to the hospital. They need to just be airlifted immediately.
Very skinny.
Upper extremity is just emaciated.
Yeah.
Lower extremity disheveled, rags. I mean, it doesn't look like it went well,
It's
so
not
to
healthy.
speak. So what was your biggest takeaway from the whole experience? Like you finished the hike, you got into town, and you were thinking like blank.
I mean, there was a lot of takeaways. The biggest one, just accomplishment, the first real thing that I set out to do and said, like, no matter, I don't care what happens, I'm doing this thing. That was a big deal for me, as an unmotivated, underachieving guy, to just, grind it out and do this thing that I'd set out to do. That was just such a huge thing. And, just living out there, you learn so much about, possessions. I had the time of my life with carrying nothing but what I had on my back. Just had a backpack full of stuff. Didn't have a cell phone at the time, didn't have anything fancy, technology, and I had an amazing time. I had this amazing experience. So you learn a lot about possessions and what you need and don't really need. And then, just an appreciation for life and, thinking outside the box, just thinking, anything's possible really if you set your mind to it. And for me, it was a big step for my faith as well. I, kind of was living kind of according to my own way and my own desires at that point, but just felt like, returning to my faith and, living a life that wasn't just selfish after that. So really rededicated my life after that.
That is awesome. So this leads me to my last question. What's the next thing? What are you gonna do now? I mean, you hiked the AT. I mean, what's next for Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. That was a big, difficult thing. Also, going back to school was big. That was kind of the next big,
What was
difficult
harder,
challenge.
physical therapy school or hiking the AT?
I mean, hiking the AT was, I think, more difficult in the short term, but PT school is such a long-term investment, being already being married and having a son and going back to school.
We were there.
And then, undergrad and PT school, that was just, man, it was such a long journey. I mean, talk about endurance. And
do you feel like your time on the trail, though, helped you get through that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have done PT school if I didn't have that time on the trail and knowing how far I can push myself, knowing that I'm just going to, whatever happens, I'm just going to keep on going here. And then, also that faith component, just living for something other than myself.
That's probably the biggest takeaway, right? I mean, we can do these awesome things. We can have great jobs, get great educations, do different types of activities. But if we don't do it for the right reasons or do it for what we're called to do, then it's kind of all the same at that point. But thanks for sharing your story, Bob. Really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast there.
Yeah. I've been a fan of this podcast for several days now.
Days, yeah.
There's quite a following.
It's pretty much just exploding virally. I mean, I can't even keep track of all the media I get and the mail and everything.
I think Joe Rogan's quote about the podcast was, "I don't know what a Wid is, but I know that I want to be one." So
I'll be sure to.
I think that's the quote that I heard. Do we have that confirmed? Or
yeah, I'll have to look. Twitter's hard to find.
Okay, we'll get that.
I'll be sure to let him know if we ever converse.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
it's a matter of time.
Matter of time at this point. Social Safari Podcast, Episode 2. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the channel below for more videos and great interviews. Thanks for joining.